This is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world.
After canceling the summit, President Trump revived tough military rhetoric he believes led North Korea to consider giving up its nuclear weapons.
We'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens. Our military, which is by far the most powerful anywhere in the world, that has been greatly enhanced recently, as you all know, is ready if necessary.
The president wrote in a letter to dictator Kim Jong-un the North's, quote, tremendous anger and open hostility scuttled the summit, a reference to North Korea's statement last night calling Vice President Pence a political dummy and warning of nuclear conflict. The president added, you talk about nuclear capabilities, but ours are so massive and powerful that I pray to God they will never have to be used. Mr. Trump did end by writing, if Kim changes course, please do not hesitate to call me or write.
We're going to see what happens. We're talking to them now. It was a very nice statement they put out. We'll see what happens. No, we'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens.
I want to ask you about some comments that Vice President Pence made. He talked about the so-called Libya model. Did that have anything to do with this decision? Well, certainly it did from the North Korean perspective. And when learning, as I have over many presidential administrations, about what the North Koreans tend to react to and why, you find certain patterns. Not always consistent patterns, but some of them do tend to repeat themselves. One is anything that seems to threaten or suggest in any way, shape, or form that the current regime is in any way jeopardized by the U.S. government. And the Libya model sends a very strong suggestion that it might be. Quickly, what's the Libya model in very thumbnail sketchy? Libya had a nuclear weapons program under the Bush administration, George W. Bush. It handed those over. Many, many years later, the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, the dictator, not only was his regime driven out of power, he was subsequently murdered. That's a regime change. That's a weakened regime that gives up its nuclear weapons and then collapses and its leader murdered. Okay, that's not exactly the model the North Koreans want to look at or contemplate dealing with a superpower like the United States. Libya is not the only model. Iraq, to a lesser extent, Ukraine is as well. But the North Koreans tend to focus on that. And any time that's suggested, first by the National Security Advisor John Bolton, then by the Vice President, the North Koreans react and react hotly to that. Is that the proximate cause? You can never be sure. But rhetorically, it gave them a hook to say, that's something we're not comfortable with and we're backing away.
What has been the reaction just south of them? What's the reaction from South Korea?
Well, South Korea said it was taken by surprise by this announcement from the White House and by the letter from President Trump. And it was clear here today that there was no advance warning given by this White House to the South Korean government that this letter was coming. There were subsequent conversations, but no heads up, if you will. And there's a constant line we get here from the White House about constant communication between the two governments. That's not holding up to the facts, because not only did South Korea say it was surprised today, just 2 days ago, a top advisor of the South Korean president placed the probability of this summit coming off at 99.9%, even though the White House was clearly already backing away from it. So the South Koreans didn't learn about mounting U.S. frustrations until the face-to-face meeting between President Trump and President Moon on Tuesday. That undercuts these representations we get all the time from the White House about constant and free-flowing communication. There's some gap between what the White House knows and intends to do and what it's communicating to the South Koreans, which will, over time, create a higher level of anxiety, because the South Koreans want this resolved peacefully, number one, and they want all ideas and notions about negotiations to continue, to bring the temperature down on the peninsula, not to ratchet it back up. The administration believes it has the military upper hand, and whether it's true or not, President Trump fundamentally believes his muscular rhetoric and real threats about military action and the engagement with the South Koreans in planned military exercises, but also the deployment of extra military equipment in and around the region, has changed the North Korean calculus. That's what President Trump believes. So he's more than willing to revert to that posture to convince the North Koreans to come back to the table or to engage in a more direct and responsive way to efforts to prepare for a summit. So the White House will wait and see what the North Koreans do. The early soundings from North Korean representatives do not appear to be hostile. They appear to be somewhat conciliatory. So there's still some room to re-engage on the summit. But June 12th appears to be beyond repair at this stage.
No, we'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens. Everybody plays games. You know that. You know that better than anybody.